So everybody loves Star Wars. I love Star Wars. Your mom loves Star Wars. We all love Star Wars. It's fantastic.
Especially your mom.
But here's the thing. What if I told you that a lot of people have not been happy with the way that Star Wars has been handled in the past couple of years, especially the video games? So the majority of people, and it's true, whether you liked it or not, a majority of people liked Star Wars The Force Awakens when that came out. Majority of people did. However, things have gone downhill a little bit in recent years, or the last, I would say, 2 years or year and a half, as far as the public perception of the Star Wars brand. One thing that really hurt it was the reception to The Last Jedi, which people were not too keen on how that presented certain characters, or how it handled Rey, or her training. Quite a bit of stuff people weren't too happy about. Another thing some people really didn't like was Solo. You and I both like Solo a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
But a lot of people just didn't want a movie about Han Solo. Or they were not willing to watch it after what happened with The Last Jedi. So that's kind of where we sit now, along with all the controversies that happened with Star Wars Battlefront 1 by EA.
And 2.
And 2, but more 1, I would say. Because
More than 2?
I don't know. That's kind of rough because they were both received poorly.
And I mean, the game was...
I guess maybe 2 was more.
Just because of the microtransactions.
Yeah, I would say 2 was... You're right. 2 was more controversial, but it added more to the game. And, I think it got away with some of what it did just because of, the story mode being there.
Yes.
Whereas 1 didn't have content to fall back on. It was very sparse. People liked it, but felt like it was a skeleton of a game. And that EA was being a little greedy with it. And then that just went off the rails with 2. So you're right, 2 was more controversial, definitely. A lot of people still enjoyed the game, but controversial. And there was a lot that needed fixing, and now that it is fixed, no one really cares anymore because it's been a long time.
Right.
That's where we're sitting. So, cut forward. Actually, about half a year ago, there was a game canceled before this. And one of the main creators behind Uncharted was working on that game. And now, today.
Yeah, so we also, that was this was kind of following a report, basically, that was saying that they had canceled a Star Wars game that was going to be an open-world Star Wars game. It was getting created by EA Vancouver. That got scrapped. They wanted to simply focus and hurry along the release of a action-adventure Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is the name of this game. So they scrapped one game, an open-world game, and then are just more focusing on a story that's called Jedi Fallen Order. And basically what this is, so from what we know as far as information-wise regarding the game, it is set after the events of Revenge of the Sith, so Episode 3, the whole Order 66 thing. It's set right after that. You're following a character named Cal, and then another companion that is a Whammon, and you're basically going around, and from what I've gathered, you're trying to get away from them trying to finish off the
newly created Empire.
Exactly.
Yeah, the newly created Empire is taking part in... There's a time period in Star Wars canon shortly following Episode 3 where the Purge kind of continues. During this time, you have Darth Vader training in the Inquisitorius program that the Emperor set up. This is kind of expanded on in things like Star Wars Rebels. The Darth Vader comic series kind of goes into this. This kind of seems to be this time period that this is taking place in, probably alongside the newer run of the Darth Vader comics from what you explained to me, time period-wise, because during that time he is training in the Inquisitorius. He is going around hunting down the few remaining Jedi that he knows of, strengthening his whole Padawan master thing with the Emperor, that sort of thing. This seems to be from the other side. So it is story-based from what you've explained. I don't know how much, because before they canceled that Star Wars story-based game, the one that was tied to the creator, I believe it was Amy Hennig of Uncharted fame, and they got rid of that. This was quite a while ago, to work more towards games as a service games from what they had explained. And now they canceled another game. And they keep saying things like we're very dedicated to the Star Wars brand, dedicated to making more games. I think their direct statement was that they were dedicated to creating more Star Wars titles.
Yes, exactly. They said, we're fully committed to making more Star Wars games. We're very excited about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order from Respawn, and we'll share more about our new projects when the time is right.
And here's the thing, Respawn, great company, actually. They make good games.
Definitely.
It certainly could be good. I'm not going to discount it. However, this is just another bad look for the brand. And that's kind of too bad. In a lot of ways, I don't think Star Wars is like a broken brand in the sense of like it won't come back. But I think in a lot of ways, EA is damaging the Star Wars IP as far as like just making them look bad and making them look not committed to stuff. Like, can you imagine if every time there was going to be a new movie coming out, it just like got canned like 6 months or a year out?
Oh, yeah. Well,
like,
I think
it's inconsistent. Well, it is consistent. It's consistently bad.
Consistently bad. Well, that's the problem, too, is I think that they're basically... So, like, the Star Wars movies, overall, we've been pretty spoiled with some pretty quality films between, I mean, Rogue One, Force Awakens, Last Jedi was okay, and then Solo was okay, but we really liked it nonetheless. Like,
yeah, I think I'm going to say real quick, not to take us off topic, I think Solo is way better than The Last Jedi as far as an overall film.
I agree.
I think The Last Jedi is more like it's not a very good film with moments of absolute greatness.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Whereas Solo is a consistent, this is really good tone.
Right.
Like, not like, oh my gosh, this is like, you know, Robert De Niro should be in this masterpiece.
Right.
But like, this is really good. This is fun.
No, I agree, and that's what I mean. Like, these movies aren't horribly hurting the brand of Star Wars.
No, the movies are not. I would argue that in some ways Last Jedi did, for a lot of people.
But
it's
also not costing them millions of dollars.
No,
I guess,
no
you know
way.
What I mean?
No
it's
way,
just,
yeah.
Where you get to like EA and you're getting to video games where people, I mean, really people are dying for Star Wars content, good quality Star Wars video games, and it really hasn't been delivered. And every time something like an open world Star Wars game sounds amazing, and it's canceled. So people just get disappointed, they get frustrated, and I think that's why it's going to culminate. And really, these games not doing that well, and people just
certainly could
backing off from the Star Wars genre a little bit because it's frustrating.
Or people buy it a bunch and then it just dies off. Like that's what happened with Battlefront 2. And I'm not defending Battlefront 2. One thing I will say, actually is a very good game now. Like if you go back and play it now, if it had launched like this, it is a very quality Star Wars shooter. A lot of fun. There's a lot going on with it. There's a lot of like cosmetics. There's a lot of fun characters to play as. Some good DLC. Could it have been better? Yes, 100%. It could have been better. But if it had launched like this, I think people would have really liked it.
Yeah.
If it had launched like it is now and built off that, would have been fantastic.
And that's part of the problem is that they're literally a quote. Or not really a quote, I guess, but it's more of so like they're canceling games to rush games to launch to get them ready so that they can get almost annual releases is kind of what it's starting to feel like they're going for.
Yeah.
Which is the problem. If they don't rush out Battlefront 2 and we get this final product, say, I don't know, last year instead of, the year before, we get it right at holiday, it's where it is now with all the content, it's not pay to win, it's a different story. You're looking at an elevated Star Wars brand instead of a really hurt brand.
Yeah.
So it's tough to, it's hard to see them consistently rushing out products that aren't ready and then are probably going to get panned. They're probably going to have microtransactions. If it's EA, it's going to have microtransactions. So people are just going to hate it. It's going to be bad.
My understanding, too, of that Uncharted, Amy Hennig-like Star Wars experience was that one reason that was canceled was because they didn't feel like they could get people to come back and play it over and over again, almost like a games as a service. And this was like how it was reported on, at least, is that was one of the motivators for why they didn't want to make that game.
Really?
Yes. Ugh. This is the game before this that was canceled, by the way.
So it was just about replayability?
Yeah.
Essentially what it was?
Yeah, and replayability and like the fact that they couldn't get you to keep coming back and buying stuff. Like they couldn't open it like a Star Wars digital mall.
So the EA model didn't fit into that game, is what it was essentially.
Yes, essentially, yes. Like, oh, this is too much like Uncharted or too much like some kind of single player game and not enough like a service.
Gee.
Yeah, that was my understanding of how it was presented. I'm sure that that could be a spin on it in a way, but it very much seems accurate to what we had seen of that game. And before that, it was a bad look because Star Wars 1313 was also canceled, like when Disney acquired this brand. Star Wars The Clone Wars show was canceled. There's been a lot of good Star Wars stuff that's been canceled. And even though Clone Wars is coming back, I think people are really just sick of getting jerked around.
Yes. Yeah.
I really think that's what it comes down to, is people are tired of getting jerked around. People are tired of, like, keeping buying stuff. And the problem is that, like, even though I don't advocate this, like, the idea of, like, well, too little, too late, because if something good does come out later, I still think you should probably try it if it's actually good, because that would be fun. You're missing out if you don't. But can you really blame people for losing interest by the time that good stuff comes around? Like, yeah, maybe they are missing out on something good, but by that point, they don't really care.
No.
And that's the problem. Like, you can't even spin it that way, because they don't care what they're missing out on. It's just like, okay, well, I've lost interest in this.
Oh, exactly. When it's got the EA logo behind it, too, it's just got such a really bad aura about it at this point that people aren't willing to give it a chance unless it's different. Unless it's not around the EA model. People really aren't dying to get their hands on EA games at this point anymore. They're really backing off. And from at least the people that I know, they're tired of it. It's the same thing over and over again, where it's not really structured around making a good game. It's more structured around what they canceled that game for. Replayability. How can we get people to keep coming back and buying packs, buying loot crates, so they can come back and get more stuff. It's I don't know. And they hide behind a season pass that's free. It's hard to put an EA logo behind a brand and expect it to do well at this point in time. Just because, I don't know. Just as a knowledgeable consumer, it's hard to support it, I guess.
Yeah, it definitely is. And meanwhile, you have other brands that do get away with some of this microtransaction stuff. Like, I know that there's still some outrage around it, especially like how Red Dead 2 Online handled its like digital economy. That wasn't great. But like, nobody's out there hating Rockstar.
No.
And that's something that's interesting too, is that like there are ways to do these microtransactions. I'm not saying they're good, but there's almost ways to get away with borderline anti-consumer looking practices and still not look like a bad guy. Rockstar is pretty good at that with things like shark cards, the Red Dead 2 Online, the fact that they didn't do anything really for the DLC for GTA 5 single player and just ignored it, and people still like the company. Like, they're able to get away with a lot. For a long time, Bethesda was able to get away with a lot. People are finally getting sick of some of the stuff that they let them get away with, but EA just hasn't historically acted like it cares about looking like the bad guy.
No.
At all. They've almost embraced that narrative.
Oh, 100%.
And it's hit the point where, like, I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were kind of talking about how businesses portray themselves, and you have these Gillettes of the world that, like, really want to look like the hero. You know, like, we're out here changing the world.
The progressive geniuses.
Yeah, and then you have these brands where it's like, you know what, I'm going to be the CEO of this company for, like, 15 or 20 years. I don't care if I run it into the ground if I make some money right now.
Right, yeah.
It seems like you have these two, like, polar opposite attitudes in a lot of these businesses. And it's rough because that really hurts these businesses for the future. Like, things that EA did 5 years ago make them look bad now.
Oh, yeah.
And even if everybody in EA was fired immediately and it was an entirely new staff, people wouldn't trust the brand.
Not at all,
no. It just damages it. And that's kind of a shame in a way, because a lot of these brands that are damaging themselves are capable of great stuff. The same thing happened with Sega, where they would like just push out like pretty much every half-baked feeling Sonic item ever, and like to the point where like no one cared anymore, and they rushed all their consoles and like killed them off immediately, and no one cared anymore. And then people came around who actually cared about Sega and really had to like dig it out of the trash and make people give a crap about the brand. And it takes a long time to do that. So EA might be doing great now, definitely from like a money standpoint. I don't doubt that. I know we've seen those numbers. But there is a point where it's like, this stuff does catch up with you. You can keep it up for now. You can keep looking bad, certainly, but there's a point of no return. I don't know where it is, but I'm sure that they are approaching it with just stars in their eyes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Because, yeah, I mean, looking at like what they're making with FIFA and, I mean, Star Wars, they've made a ton of money. They probably don't see a reason to stop, but I don't know. It'll catch up with them, like you said.
It certainly will, especially if they keep up this same behavior. But anyway, guys, let us know what you think in the comments down below. The story for this game actually is interesting. That's not really what we're coming down on. It's just the business practices of EA and how they are just canning Star Wars everything. So let us know what you think, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.